Welcome everyone. Welcome back to what is another weekly preview. Myself, as usual, with my esteemed co-colleague, my esteemed co-presenter, my friend Paul Kelly. We are here as we usually do to preview three fights. We've got a range of action. Actually, we're in three different locations. We're in the UK, we're in Australia, we're in the US of A. We've got world title action, we've got interim action, and we've got prospect action. But before we get into all of that, I actually am going to bring you to what I like to call, actually, from a sort of co-presenter point of view, TBE. That is Paul Kelly. I'm going to ask Paul Kelly how you're doing first and foremost, and I'm going to have you take us through, I think, the first of those fights, which is in the US of A, and it is a world title fight. Paul Kelly, TBE, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good, mate. Glad to be on another video here with yourself, obviously. Best part of the week, us jumping on the weekly preview. As you mentioned there, world title action, prospect action, interim world title action. So yeah, we're in three different parts of the world, and we may as well get started with, I think, probably the biggest fight of the weekend, the world title action, the WBC super lightweight title. In fact, obviously Regis Prograis defends his belt against Danielito Zorrilla. Um, yeah, Regis Prograis, everyone knows who he is. Doesn't really need an introduction, but like we always do, we'll go through a quick tale of the tape. Prograis is 28-1 with 24 stoppages, 34 years old, from the USA, obviously. He's a southpaw, 5'8", and has a 67-inch reach. In the opposite corner, Zorrilla is 17-1 with 13 knockouts, so also got a pretty good reach. A pretty good knockout percentage. 5 years younger at 29. He's from Puerto Rico. He's an orthodox fighter. An inch taller at 5'9" and has a 3-inch reach advantage over Prograis. You look at Zorrilla, and maybe not a household name, but his only loss did come to Arnold Barbosa Jr., who has obviously since beaten Jose Pedraza. So not a bad name to be the only defeat on your record. Similarly, Prograis' only defeat on his record was that kind of contentious one, I think, maybe to Josh Taylor in the World Boxing Super Series. I know a few people maybe had Prograis winning that fight, maybe a draw, but yeah, doesn't take away from the fact that Prograis is probably widely regarded as the best super lightweight, or it's definitely the second or third best super lightweight in the world. He's beaten the likes of Jose Cepeda, Julius Ndongo, Terry Flanagan, Carol Reddick, and the Belfast man, Tyrone McKenna, his biggest win, obviously. Um, but yeah, without further ado, Elliot, I look at these two fighters, and I think it's a decent enough fight. One I expect Prograis probably to win. But how do you see this fight going? How do you see this playing out? And my second question to follow that up is, do you see
Yeah.
Prograis as the number one 140-pound fighter, or do you have him behind the likes of Taylor, Lopez, Catterall?
First of all, thank you for that eloquent breakdown, Paul. I'm a big fan of Richard McGray. I mean, you and I have spoken, we've covered a few of his fights before on various platforms. Massive fan of his. It's a close fight against Taylor. I'm not going to say it was a robbery, but I actually had it. You can say it was close either way, that fight, to be perfectly honest. How do I see this fight going? I see Prograis winning this fight. I see it being another stoppage, frankly. Um, like I say, I'm a huge fan of his. And frankly, I do see him actually as the number one in the division. I'm not going to lie. I do think, obviously, look, Taylor obviously with his issues, he's had as well, obviously, weight and obviously performance against Catterall aside. I still would probably have Prograis actually probably nipping him, but obviously I'd like to see that fight run back if they could, if he could get down to the weight. Obviously, Taylor's in action, isn't he? Against Lopez. So see how that goes. But yeah, I think it, we're worried to move up and worried to vacate that division. I would have Prograis number one by without a doubt.
Yeah, interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head. I would agree with you. If Taylor does move up to welterweight, I've got Regis Prograis as the number one. I think he's a brilliant fighter. There's some huge fights out there for him. Obviously, maybe rumors of the Devin Haney fight if Devin Haney does indeed move up. It's a fight I'd love to see, but that's one for the future. Elliot, I'm going to throw it over to you now to take us through the second fight of the weekend. I believe that there is some interim world title action, and we are going down under.
We are indeed, Paul. Thank you very much. We are, like I said, WBO interim world super welterweight action here. We've got Tim Tszyu, obviously son of Costa, fighting against Carlos Acampo. And as you said before, you like to do a quick tell of the tape, which is something we always like to do here. So we'll make no solaces, and we'll breach with that tradition here. So we've got Tim Tszyu, obviously 28 years old, 5'8.5" with a 72-inch reach. Comes into this with a perfect record of 22-0 with 16 KOs. Last time out fighting against Tony Harrison. He's obviously been on a bit of a run, which includes Terrell Grasher and Takeshi Inoue. Talking about his opponent again, some of you guys may not necessarily be too familiar with. with Carlos Ocampo, but he comes into this fight 27 years old, so slightly younger, but not not a negligible amount really. 5 foot 10.5 with a 73-inch reach, so slight advantages there in height and reach. With 35-2 record, 23 KOs and 1 loss. His loss being a UD loss against Sebastian Fundora, who obviously at that weight is still ridiculous, as we've spoken about on this channel before. So yeah, I suppose, Paul, my question to you is really, obviously, coming into this division, obviously you've got Charlo's kind of ghost, I suppose, still reigns over this division. But other than that, you've obviously got Tszyu, who's obviously right up there in the rankings. You've got other names like Castano, Fundora still, even Liam Smith kicking around. Do you see this being a routine victory for Tszyu, or do you see that Carlos Campos of Mexicans, we've seen Mexicans throw spanners into the works before, do you see him possibly springing an upset here, or do you think Tszyu will have too much for him?
I think it's another good name to have on Tszyu's record if he does indeed win this fight, which I do expect him to do. Um, as you kind of pointed out so eloquently in your breakdown there, I think there's some big fights for Tszyu out there. Obviously, the Charlo fight's the one we all want, but as you said, a bit of a ghost still, but technically still the undisputed champion, holds every belt at 154. Um, I look at Ocampo, and obviously you mentioned the loss to Fundora, and I believe his only other defeat was to Errol Spence at welterweight, and it was a knockout. But like Errol Spence has knocked nearly everybody out that he's fought, so that's no disgrace. I think Ocampo's another good name. I think he himself has a bit of power, so I think maybe he could be dangerous early on. I expect Tszyu to maybe try and move a bit inside the first 4 or 5 rounds or so, before taking over really. And I think that we're probably looking at an a Tszyu knockout here. I would probably edge mid to late rounds, somewhere around the 7-8 mark, 7-8-9. That's kind of what is jumping out at me here. And yeah, in terms of what's next, I hope Tszyu, for fight's sake and for boxing's sake, hope he kind of comes through here. If he doesn't get the Charlo fight, there's obviously the ones you mentioned, Liam Smith potentially. Castano's another good name. Even the likes of Madrimov or Kurbanov, those kind of names. Some good names there for Tszyu to fight. So yeah, it's a fight I'm interested in, and one I do expect Tszyu to win reasonably well.
No, I totally agree with you, Paul. And when you said late rounds, I was hoping that you'd say sort of 10, 11, 12, so I could leap in and say, no, Paul, I reckon 7 and 8 myself. But you've obviously taken that one as well. So we're not going to disagree. I totally agree with you. I think second half of the fight, Tszyu stoppage victory is where I'd go. I mean, you're the betting show man, but if I had money, that's where I would go. But Paul, we are going to come back to you now for, I'm going to call it prospect action, which if anyone who's watched the channel regularly would know that one of our faculty members, Owen, is constantly in a state of shock that Adam Azim is not a world champion already. But we are going to go obviously to prospect action. I've obviously mentioned his name there, a bit of a spoiler alert. Sorry for that, Paul. For a fight which was taking place at York Hall. Please take us through it.
Yeah, you are indeed right. It's some Friday night action. Obviously, the Australian fight will be Sunday. The Saturday night fight was the USM. We've got a Friday night fight here at the York Hall, as you mentioned. They're one of the hottest prospects in British boxing, without a doubt. Adam Azim back in action against Aram Fanyan, I think, or Fanyan. I'll pronounce his name. Hope I haven't butchered that too bad. Adam Azim, no real introduction, but for the sake of the tale of the tape, as we always do, I'll go through it. 8-0 with 6 knockouts, just 21 years old, makes me feel like a granddad already. Orthodox fighter, 5'10", and his opponent, Fanyan, is 22-1. However, the thing that's telling for me, which we'll probably come on to, is 22-1, brilliant record on paper, but only 4 stoppages. He's 5'11", so a little bit taller, also orthodox, and he's only fought out of Ukraine once, which was in Germany last time out. Fanyan, his only loss did come obviously back in October 2018, and it was against the fellow undefeated fighter at the time. So you kind of look at this, and on paper, 22-1, it looks like a step up for Adam Azim, but for me, there's a bit of a padded record there with his opponent, in my opinion. Azim got well needed 10 rounds last time out against Santos Reyes, I think his name was. He didn't, a lot of people thought he would blow him out of there. He didn't. We were used to seeing Adam Azim blowing people out of there. But Reyes, took him to 10 rounds. He had a concrete forehead, honestly, a concrete chin. Adam Azim, but I think it was good for Adam Azim. He showed different elements to his game that he has, not just a a knockout artist and flashy. He's got some boxing ability, speed, timing, and all that as well, and can go 10 rounds. Obviously, for me, I actually think Adam Azim could potentially get back on the KO train here. Perhaps too pretty early. I'm not gonna say exactly when because I want to say obviously hear your prediction first. But yeah, I think it's first of all, I'm obviously going to ask you how you see the fight playing out. Will it be in Azim KO here? And second off, this opponent's good on paper, but my question, and I might be stepping out of line here a bit, is he actually a step down from the likes of Reyes or even Ryland Charlton?
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a fantastic breakdown. To be honest with you, I sometimes when you break these fights, in my back of my mind, I'm thinking, is there any weakness here that I can unpick and possibly bring some difference? But no, not at all on that. I think you're exactly spot on. I think looks good on paper, absolutely. Last time out, Adam was him getting rounds in, what everyone kind of wanted. This does look a step up, like you say, but like you say, the record's not great, not a great KO percentage. I don't really expect him to test Adam Azim there, and I do actually expect him to be back on the KO trail as well. So, I mean, look, obviously, what we saw, didn't we? Succession of first round KO, second round KO. I mean, in some ways, I'd be a bit. I mean, you wouldn't mind seeing it in a way, but it's just that sense of like building Adam Azim and like where he is obviously in the rankings, even at British level, like opponents, some of those names like Dalton Smith in the division, Harlem Eubank, like Ritson, I suppose, kicking around, all those kind of names that you're kind of like, where are we going to build him essentially? You need obviously to build him a bit and then throw him in with someone live. So if he does just go and knock this guy out in sort of first, second round, to me that's not great. I'd rather see him kind of like have 5 or 6 rounds, have a bit of a fight, and then sort of come through it that way. But I totally agree with you. To be honest with you, I think it'll be first half of the fight at stoppage. Adam Azim somewhere in there. To be perfectly honest with you, but I think good matchmaking, like in a way, it looks good on paper. But yeah, I think I'd like to see Adam Azim get through this and actually, like all jokes aside, I actually agree with Owen. I'd like to see him kick on and actually go in there, at least if it's a British level, have some fights. The division was against some sort of renowned opponents and go from there. To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you mentioned the one there. In fact, we did have a ESBR social not so long ago, and there was Owen on Saturday morning waking up having his coffee out of his Adam Azim mug. Now, I'm only joking, but yeah, no, obviously Adam Azim, hot prospect, really talented boy, some massive fights ahead of him, but has to get through this first. I agree with you, Elliot. I think kind of alluded to it before. I think that although I want Adam Azim to step up the level of opposition, and this guy, does look credible on paper. I think it's a first half of the fight knockout again for Adam Azim, and maybe even go within the first 3 or 4 rounds. To be quite honest with you, I don't know, because the telling thing for me is it's different. Adam Azim can look at this guy and think, even just by looking at his record, 4 stoppages and 22 wins, there's not a lot coming back in terms of power. So I don't think that'll really fear Adam Azim as much. So I think he'll get back on the knockout streak here, and yeah, I think he'll put in a kind of a phenomenal performance. And yeah, I'd go maybe if I had to pick an individual round, I'll go for round three.
No, thank you very much, Paul. And guys, that brings us to the end of obviously this weekly preview. 3 fights, 3 different locations, 3 different, I suppose, levels. As we always say, if you agree with us, I mean, Paul and I have agreed in this one. So are we both talking sense? Are we both talking rubbish? Let us know in the comments below. And obviously we'll have further content coming up. We'll have some deep fight breakdowns. We'll have interview features. We'll have obviously we're talking through the undercards and the fighters that are on those cards as well. So yeah, let us know what you think as always. And yeah, look forward to the weekend. Look forward to the fights. And most importantly, I have to say thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for joining me. And again, thank you very much, guys, for watching.